So far we looked at many different aspects of three-dimensional design, but where does it all start? We have to go back to the roots, to 2D design. Let's take a look. As always, I'm joined by my colleague, Mr. Illesbab, who's going to help us to delve into the two-dimensional ARCHLine feature set.
Hi there.
The main reason why we have this webinar is because we realize that we are always using profiles and we're always using images during our work, but we never actually talked about how to use these images, how to create these elements from which we are going to do design.
Yeah, well, today we will start first with the images, how you can handle image files, and well, most of the time you will find these image files useful for materials and other things like that on the surfaces, but I think you will show us a few features how to process them as initial drawings or other parts. And in the second half, I'm about to show you a few things for the other end of the process when we would like to, represent our project in a very complex way, but using an easy approach. I mean, you will likely want to represent your model, your project in several versions, and for this I will show how to use the documentation tool, I mean the plot layout tool, and what sort of options it offers. I will also show you how you can organize content and how you can export and import project parts, not only the full project, but I would like to also introduce how you can import a drawing from another project. So about how to process these 2D items and other things.
That's right. But let's start with the images you said. Yep. When you are working with ARCHLine, there's a couple of scenarios when you would actually use images. For instance, you want to get a sample of a texture, or you want to turn an image into some kind of object. Or another very frequent topic is when you have a floor plan that you want to digitalize somehow. So in order to show you what ARCHLine provides in terms of processing images, I'm going to start from the beginning. Some of these might be already covered by other webinars, but let's go back to the roots. So what I'm going to show you now is how to work with images from the beginning and all the way to the end. So as you know, when you want to import something into ARCHLine, there are several ways to do it. And the most direct way is that I just browse the file in my file browser, just click on it and drag it into the system, just like that. So I just let it go. And when I do that, I see an orange rectangle which shows how big the image should be. And
is this the real size of the image?
Actually, it's not. I just first have to click once, and then I have to define where the other ending point should be. But this is not actually stretching. So the proportions of the images would not change. I just have to define approximately how big I want this image to be, but I can resize
it's just a click then.
That's right. Once I inserted it, now this is a special situation. This is a floor plan, so I wouldn't want to stretch this because I would lose the proportions. But what I would need to do is I have to put this into scale because I have no idea. I mean, what I can do, I can resize the image like that, but then the actual dimensions would not be the correct ones. So for this,
we actually don't know what's the size from that point to the other corner.
So what I would need to do, I have to find 2 points on this image and define the actual distance between them. And for that, there's a tool for every image file, and that's called Calibrate. So this is not only for images, or I mean for floor plans, for all kinds of images we have this available. And what I have to do now, I have to click between 2 points and define the distance between them. Now this is a raster image. If I zoom in, you notice, you already talked about this before quite frequently, that it falls apart to pixels. Yeah. So you can't really hit the exact mark, but for that reason we suggest to use a larger distance. So instead of going with
and for this reason there is always a little bias in the calibration.
So so that's something we have to sacrifice. So you click once, and then you just move to the other point that you want to define, zoom in, and again I have to do some guesswork here, but if I hit it, I can submit the value, which would be 9.4. And if I do that, it scales up. Now, this should be in scale now. So this is something that I can work with, but there are some other data on this floor plan that I don't actually need. So what happens if I want to crop this?
Do you open it in an image editor?
You can do that beforehand, but sometimes you just want to temporarily hide things, and then you want to work with them later on. So all the cropping that I'm going to do now can be reverted back to the original one.
So the built-in tools you use.
That's right. So I right-click and I say I want to clip this image and I want to crop it. And when I say I want to crop it, the edges would be editable, and then I just click on it and offset it. and I just offset
just like
the
contour
boundaries.
of a slab or something.
That's right. So I just have to offset it in, and then I have to hit enter to accept this editing, and then it would be gone. Now there's another island of thing that I want to edit out, but I can't use the same tool because otherwise I would lose some content
So
here.
that's always rectangular, the previous one, the crop is.
This is always rectangular, but there are some other ways to crop things out. So if I say that I want to clip the image and I have two choices here. I either sketch a polygon and everything would be deleted within the polygon or outside of the polygon. I'm going to go with image in, and after that, all I have to do, I just have to just sketch a regular polygon the way you would with the two-dimensional tools, and once I have that, it's edited out. Now, it's very important, maybe it's not visible on the screen, but you see that this and this has different colors, so you always have to click on the image to see how far the boundaries go.
It's kind of barely visible now, so we can see that what was cropped up.
It is, that's right. Now, let me show another trick. What happens if you want to redraw this? We have already covered this, but there's a very important point here. So if I want to redraw this segment of the wall, I go to the wall tool, hit wall, and I pick a 30 wide wall because that's the thickness I have to work with. I just click the point. Notice that I have to flip the reference line so that I would draft on this way. I just want to do it for this segment only because that's a very important point I want to make here. If I want to redraw this window, I can do it without any problems. I can just pick the two ending points, and there you go. Now the problem is that if I do this for all the windows, I would be pretty confused because I wouldn't know what are the windows that I have, what are the windows that I haven't transcribed, because you know, visibly there's no difference. Now for this,
because
it looks pretty same. So unless
colors are pretty much similar.
Yes, unless I select it, I wouldn't be able to tell. So for this, I have this facility in the image properties, where you can just go to the transparency and crank it up a bit. I like to keep it somewhere around the middle,
center,
and that would allow me to see it. I can still see the image, but now it's not that striking.
So you can emphasize the content that you create.
That's exactly the case. And another thing what I like to use, because sometimes when we have a reconstruction project, we have several images on top of each other. So you have to navigate somehow. And for that, we are able to put images to different either layers.
So this is an image by image setting.
That's right. That's right. You can either store images on layers, or you can go to the floor settings and you can just move this to other floors. That would not mean that they would be gone, but you can pull them up whenever you want to use them. So, for instance, I'm going to just put this image to the basement level. And what happens now if I navigate between the floors, I see I have the walls that I transcribed on one floor, and below that I have on the basement level I have the image. Moreover, I can go to the floor manager and I can enable the visibility of the basement, and then I can see what I'm working with. Now, just two more functions regarding basic settings of the images before I proceed. I want to show you what happens if you want to resize something without any restrictions. I already imported an image, and I'm going to show you another example. I have this door here, and if I want to resize it, and I want to modify it, I have two options. One is scaling, which is what you use if you want to keep it disproportionate. But there is obviously a facility to make it to stretch. This is not going to be that spectacular. And another important point, if you want to mirror the images, this is where you can do it. So you can just flip it, and you can just flip it horizontally like that. So this is where you do it. Okay, so these are the basic things.
And what happens if I know the size of this door, and I would like to type the exact same value? So I know that it's, 2.1 by, 1 meter.
Then you highlight the image and you resize it here.
I see.
So you can resize both values, and these are unlinked, so you can freely resize
if
them.
I disable maintain aspect ratio, then I can just freely resize the
That's right. So if I know that this is 2.1, that's the the x should be the 0.9, and the height should be 2.1. In fact, we are going to have a similar example in a couple of minutes for that. So that's how you do it. You would need to save this later on, but I'll show you that in a minute how that works. Now, let's load up another project, and I'll show you a couple of other tricks regarding images. And these are a bit more spectacular, but I think that would show you the tool set that we have in terms of editing images. Another scenario that you find. So we already had one scenario when you are working with floor plans. But there's another situation that might come up. Maybe you have images that you took on the scene and you want to use them somehow. Now the problem with these images is that sometimes they are in perspective. So you're not seeing things in an orthogonal view. You have to use them as perspectives, but
sometimes you can create a frontal picture, but sometimes it's just impossible because it's too high.
That's right. I think this is best illustrated with an example I have here. This is an image I took in one of the rooms in the office. This is our colleague's picture on the wall. Let's say that you took this image on the scene and you want to use this somehow. You want to create this as an image or as a picture on the wall that you see on the right-hand side. Now, I can't do it right now because it's all distorted.
Yeah, so I couldn't use this as a texture because it contains too much.
There's too many things. I mean, I could obviously go around and crop the edges, but then I would still have this sort of trapezoid shape that I have to...
Because crop is always...
That's right. So what are the tools here? I have to turn this into an orthogonal view. Maybe this is something that you would use more frequently with empty rooms that you take a photo of, but this is the core concept. So you right-click on the image that you want to work with, and you go with define orthogonal view.
I don't have to calibrate it before?
It's not needed, because if you go with this kind of distortion that I'm going to do, the image is going to be not rescaled but stretched and distorted. So if you add any kind of measurements,
because it's perspective. So
that's right. That's right. So you don't have to resize it right now. I know that this is 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters in real life, but I don't have to measure it now. I just have to work it as it is. And I'm just going to highlight the ending point and snap it to where the actual edges are. So the software tells me, okay, now you tell me where this picture ends. And I just have to click on the edges and tell the software that, okay, this is where the end should be. This is where nice 90-degree angles should be visible. So once I'm done with that, I hit enter, and I see that the image is there, it's born. Now, here's one problem, and this is sort of an answer to your question, is that I haven't resized this before, but now you see this is not really a rectangle, while it is a rectangle in real life. So maybe the measurements are a bit different. So you see that there's some distortion. I could modify this right now, but
so the point here, the software cannot recognize the real world size because it can be anything.
No, you have to tell them. Now you can either calibrate it, resize it. But what we are going for is that we want to turn this image into a material that I can apply to walls, picture frames, whatever. So the way I do that, I just right-click on the item I want to save, and I'm just going to go with save as material. And this would allow me to name this. I'm just going to name it webinar picture, and I just hit OK. Now, you might say that I haven't resized this yet. That's not really needed at this point, because later I can do that. For example,
so it's not necessary to resize it before you save it.
Yes, so if I go to the webinar picture, I just open it. Now the differences are that this is just a raster image, and this is already a material. You have already talked a lot about how materials are handled, so you can set up the reflection, all kinds of things. But what we are interested in is this cogwheel thing. If I click that, I can go to settings, and I can fine-tune the physical attributes, and that is what I'm interested in. I want to resize this to 0.4 and 0.4. So these are the actual measurements. And also I could set up the appearance and some other things, but this is something I'm not really interested in.
I noticed something that it's set to stretch. Is it something that I want to use if I set up the size?
Since I know that this is going to be a 40 by 40 image, I'm just going to keep it as stretch, but later on there's going to be an example where this would be a mosaic.
Okay, so this time it should be stretched.
This time it should be stretched.
Okay.
Once I have saved this, now comes the actual part where we do some designing. So I want to have an image over here, a picture on the wall, for which we have a tool. It's under interior, single object,
tool.
And picture on the wall. And if I do that, I see that I can add the picture. Make no mistake, this image that you see here is just a preset. So
that's perhaps the default.
That's the default, and the sizes are not good as well. But this is something that I don't have to care about right now. I just have to place it in order to be able to work it. So if I click on it, I can go to its settings, and this is something that we already talked about regarding pictures. You can add picture frames, matting, but this is what I want to do now. Change the material. It's called material, but that's the actual texture within the
It's simple
frames.
because we will use the material
That's
that
right.
we turn this photograph into.
That's right. There are already some measurements here. I don't have to care about them. I just have to click on the material, and now I have to browse the picture.
It was a webinar picture or something.
Yes, it was. That's right. I hit OK, and now comes this pop-up where it asks me if I want to keep the previously set dimensions, and I think I have to go with no because I want to import the new
previously set dimensions are not the previously set dimensions for the material.
No, but this
what I can see there now.
So if I hit no,
it's not correct.
It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Now the only reason I'm not adding any frames to it now because in real life there were no frames here. So that's one scenario where you take a picture, crop it, turn it into a material, and use it in this kind of design scenario.
Yeah.
But here's another trick. You notice that there's a picture of a door here. Now we are very lucky because this is orthogonal, so I don't have to distort it.
It was perhaps downloaded from a website or something?
That's right. There's actually quite a few of them. It's not high resolution, but you can work with these contents maybe from manufacturer websites. But what I want to do is I want to have this texture on this door. Now this shouldn't be a problem because I can just save it as a material, drag and drop, and that's it. But you notice that this door has glass panels.
Yeah.
And I want to make this door in a way that I have the same texture, but I can see through the glass panels. Now,
well, actually, there's a tool to model these sort of
yes,
doors, but in
that's
this case,
right.
I don't have to model the door. I can keep it simple.
It depends on where you are in your design. If you want to create a customized door, which you want to use in other projects as well, maybe you have to take the time to actually design it with the insets and all. But if this is just something conceptual, then you can just sketch it up real quick with these tools that I'm going to show you.
Don't take close shots or something.
Yes. Yeah. So it depends on what you actually need. But I'll show you how this works. So. Again, I'm starting with a picture. I just have to browse it from my computer. This is going to be this door over here. And now comes the part which you just asked about before. I have to resize it. But here's a very important thing. It's barely visible, but I see that the frame of the picture is larger than what I actually see. And this is not
space.
Yes, this is not good because if I save it as it is, then this area would be added to the materials.
Yeah.
So I have to
crop that.
Yes, I have to, with the same tools that I used before, I have to clip the image and nicely crop it back. So like that and like that. And now I have to resize it. So like you said before, I click on the door and I said it's going to be, I think I'm going to maintain the ratio, but I want to make it into 2.1 just. I think that would coincide with the actual door. And now comes the part where I want to make these panels see-through. And there's a tool for that. It's called alpha channels. Now, if you have already worked with another picture editing tool, you might be already familiar with this, but let me explain it briefly.
What's alpha?
That's actually an area that I determine which would be filled with either a color, a background, or it's going to be see-through. So it's very weird to say that it's going to be filled
so alpha
with
means it's see-through
yes.
in a gradient.
Yes. So that's the word. Again, I have two options. Either I define a polygon and everything will be visible within the polygon,
inside or outside.
Or outside. I'm going to go with within. And I have to crank this up to transparent. And now I have a whole new feature set up here where I can define what I want to actually draw. I'm going to go with rectangle and just click. And when I do that, I see that it's going to be sort of deleted, but now I can see through. So that's the tool to do it. I'm in a hurry, so I'm not going to go with snappings, but what you can also do, what is good practice, is to redraw these panels.
That's what I wanted to say, that usually if I do something like this, and if I have a little more time,
yes,
I just create guidelines using the 2D tools.
And that's actually what I did over here in the other example. You see the lines
you
over
actually created lines.
That's right. But now I'm done with this part of the work, and let's see how it acts. Because theoretically, if I drag this above anything else, I can see through it. So this means that if I save this as a material and I apply it to anything, I would be able to see through these things.
Are there images containing the alpha already, or?
Yes, I think some PNGs do. I'll talk about them in a second. But now I'm just going to go down the same path as we walked before.
If they don't, I can just,
That's right, that's right. Sometimes it's cumbersome because there's too many.
Yeah.
And again, there are scenarios where you would rather just design the whole door as a 3D model. But this is a quick way to sort of tap into what you see on the scene. So I'm just going to go with save materials, and this is going to be webinar door transparent. And here's what I do. I go to the 3D window, and I go to the object, the design center, and I'll just drag and drop this onto the door. And I just go with replace this material with another one, but on this object only. And if I click on it, I see that if I go outside, I can see maybe better. I can see into the location.
Yeah.
So this way, this object was applied to with this material, and now I can use the alpha channels to see through these panels. You notice that sometimes when the material is added to everything, it might not get you the right results because the door jamb shouldn't be see-through, right?
So it's mapped to the frame as well.
Yes, but you can toggle that. So you can go to the door properties, and you can just either change the solid or the wings separately. Now it's, everything is added to everything, but I can just go with the solid and change it to something else. Maybe I can find something more.
Let's just go with the
color. Just something just to illustrate the difference. And now a very important thing: if you did this once, but you can save this door as a style, so that you can use it later on.
Yeah, we'll talk about the styles in the end.
Just like that. So now it's there for later use. But again, if you use this frequently and this is something that you want to have modeled, then I suggest you model that. We'll show that in another show as well. You asked about transparency in images, and PNGs are the ones that can carry that data. But PNGs, it might be a bit tricky because not all PNGs have transparency, but they are the ones who can carry this data. There are several.
Not all PNGs are transparent.
Yes,
by default.
There are several scenarios when you can use these images. I'm just going to give you one example. I found this website where I was looking for a mesh, a mesh pattern which I can loop. And if you find something like this and you see this kind of checkered board thing in the background, this means that this could be transparent. But again, sometimes they are not. Sometimes they are downloaded, modified in a photo editor, and they lose this transparency. I show you two examples to show you what you can expect. So let's see one PNG which is transparent, like that. First I have to go back to the 2D. I think this is better to illustrate it here. So I have this kind of nice grid pattern, which if I navigate onto something else, this is the non-transparent.
So this happened. This was again a PNG file, but it looks non-transparent.
So see, visibly, except for their colors, there's no difference between these two images.
But when you test it in ARCHLine, you can tell whether they are transparent or not.
That's right. You can see that this is transparent. This has certain aspects which you can see through, but this one doesn't have it. So I would say that you have to test it before you work it.
But it's very easy to test,
That's right. Now let's see how we can use something like that. One example of how you could use that is when you want to create like a metal mesh fence. But I decided not to do that because it's not a really cute example. It doesn't look that good. So instead, I'm going to go with this sunshade, onto which I'm going to map another texture with tiny holes in it, so you can see through, and there could be nice shadows on the renders. So what I do is I have to just drag and drop this texture, which is a mesh with a pattern, and if I move it, you see that you can see through it. Now, like I said before, you don't have to resize this before you start working with it. First, you have to save it as a material. Again, right-click. I go with save. Oh, sorry, not save as, but save as material.
Well, actually, with the save as, you can, if you have any content as an image in your project, you can save it onto the hard drive as a separate image.
Yes, you do. So I saved it, and now it's among the materials that I have in the design center. And I again go to the settings, and now I have to decide on the size, because I don't want this now to be stretched onto the surface, because then I would see all kinds of distortion and holes would be too large. So I go with tile.
Because now we have nice circular cuts.
And these are the nice circular cuts I want to keep the sizes. So I go with a tile, which means that it would be looped in every direction. That's right. And I want to decrease the size to something else, maybe 2 by 2. I think that will be good. We'll see how it looks like, and then we'll see how that works. And once I did that, I can just go to the 3D, and I want to apply this texture onto this this sunshade. And I'm just going to drag and drop, replace. Oh, sorry, I did it with the slab under it.
Yeah,
it happens sometimes.
I think if you yeah.
No, I think this should be fine. I just clicked too early, and
yeah.
And if I zoom in, I see now that the nice sort of circular patterns are visible on both sides actually. So if you want to create a render out of it, this would actually
partially see through.
Would be partially see through, and it would have a very, very good result. Like I said, you can use it in other circumstances, maybe creating a mesh fence. In case you're wondering, this tool that we have here, this shade is created with the freeform surface. So this is not something that we downloaded. There are other videos on how to create that, but I just wanted to point this out, that this is something that was created from within the software.
Yeah.
Now, talking about PNGs, there's one last thing I want to cover, and that is sprites. Yeah. This is something that we already talked about before, but they are also in the same ballpark because they play with their see-throughness. So let's see how that works. First of all, what are sprites? Now, their use is that you can just take a two-dimensional image and put it into your three-dimensional space. And the way they work is that if you look around, these images always show their faces to you, so they turn with you.
The one side
that is on the photograph. Now, the advantage of that is that you don't have to download heavy human objects, because obviously you can do that. You can download three-dimensional people to inhabit your floor plans, but
there's lots of surfaces.
Yeah, too many surfaces, and maybe you are at a phase where you don't need that. You just want to show figures.
Yeah, if you would like to be more conceptual.
That's right. Now you can use any kind of images for that, but PNGs are very good for this purpose. I'll show you an example. So if I go to single object, tools, and sprite definition, then I can browse for an image what I like. There's actually a link connection integrated, which I can show you. That's actually a Swedish website which has all kinds of people which are sort of like this cut out paper figures.
The artist making this page actually takes photographs of his friends and family and makes it accessible. You can also buy and support him. And you can download these things and turn them into actually paper cuts.
That's right.
In the software.
Let's see one in action. I use the one what I downloaded from this website. This is going to be this gentleman in the green jumpers.
Yeah, and the point here is that this is very, very nice and very useful collection, but what we show now is not only useful with that specific collection.
Oh yes.
You can use it with any sort of
images. That's right. And maybe I'll show another example later on. So if I hit open, I see that the image is imported. And now the software asks me two important things. One is what would be the object height. Now this is going to be 1.76 to correspond my own height, and then I have to click on a color which would be the background. Now what that means is that this will be the color which the software is going to cut out.
Okay.
So if I hit the white one, then the white one would be the one which would be as a reference omitted from the image, or I can use any other colors, but in this scenario the only thing that makes sense is the white one.
Is this a PNG we can download or use for this, or is a PMP or JPEG? Or
this is a PNG.
But we can use JPEG as well.
Yes, it's provided that there's something that the software can omit. I mean, you can just use a whole image with the frames intact, and that would act the same way, but it's not the same.
I don't have to specifically find PNG images.
No, but one thing you have to keep an eye on is where they stand. I'll show you where that matters. If I hit create, I'm just going to name this webinar sprite. And if I go here and I research my things under the webinar name,
the point here is that I think now you search in materials only. If you go to the main page and you look for, there should be in the objects when we look for.
Oh
perhaps it's there.
Now make no mistake, if it's sort of squeezed together, it doesn't mean that it's corrupted. It's just the way they appear if they are high but narrow. So you just have to find the ones that you saved, and I just have to drag and drop and click where I want this little guy to stand.
That's rather convincing.
And here's the thing: if I move around, this person will always show his only face or back to us.
Yeah.
Now
because there's no information in this photograph.
Right. So again, this is not in the same category as a three-dimensional human figure, but this is a good way to represent how the space is going to be inhibited.
Yeah.
I think maybe I have another example of how a sprite could act, because some people might say that this is not that convincing, and I need something more conceptual, and this is where this kind of wireframe people come into picture, and this is maybe you can tell about that because you created this one.
Well, this was I found this online. It's the original drawing was made by Walter Gropius, and I just use it as an example that you can actually turn a line drawing also into a sprite easily. You can even create your own line drawings, scan them, and just put them in. The whole idea behind it is totally the same. What you do is just you tell the software which part is the one to keep and which part is to cut out. And it was created actually similar. There was a white paper and a black painting around, and just pick the white area. Told that it's around 1.7 meter tall, and then there's on the right hand side you can see the 2D symbol, which is a human from top, and there is this symbol which always face the same way towards you. But I think it's a very, very good tool to conceptually tell your clients what's the size of the design, the space, and so on. You just put a few figures inside them, and they can imagine what's the size of the interior.
That's correct. That's exactly the point. That's what I wanted to show regarding images. Obviously, from this on, it could be going on different paths.
Yeah.
And that will be another show when we talk about how to redraw images.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole different story. But now let's look at the documentation side of things that you said you are going to talk about.
Yeah. For this, I have prepared a project. Actually, this is the project we used quite a lot during these sessions. And let me just open it. It was inside the same folder. Let me just open this project, and it was in the documentation part here, and I think I will go with this one. Yeah, I don't save the previous one. So this is the same project, which was we got this from one of our users, and we are very thankful for that. We use this for many times for presentation purpose, and now I would like to show you how you can create a plot layout. What are the ways to create a plot layout, and how to organize content of the plot layout, managing the layers of the current drawing, and what's the difference between managing the layers here and managing the layers on the plot layout. So actually, I do have a layout here, but I would like to show you how to prepare a new one, because there is one thing which can be important when you prepare a plot layout. If you already have a plot layout and that drawing is the active drawing, and then you go to documentation and plot layout and prepare plot layout, then actually the software will add a new page right next to this existing layout. So let me just show you that. If just prepare plot layout.
So on this huge gray space, we'll have another sort of slide next to it.
And it's actually on the other screen. So it will be, I don't know, ISO A3 or A4. I can set up. I think it should be landscape. I can add my stamp as well. I mean the title box as well. But now I just skip that and just say that okay, do that. See, now I have a new page, and this way I can just create new other pages right next to it. The software won't kind of organize it if you have too many. You can do that. It will just add more and more and more right next to it. But if you don't like the horizontal layout, you can just select anytime this content or this content and move it somewhere else. So you can just say, okay, I select everything and let's just move it below this one. So you can freely organize it. Just don't forget to select the whole page and not skipping anything. So now what we have here is that's an empty white paper. And if I would like to, I don't know, for example, create a layout, this is layout 1 now, and I can rename it to, I don't know, layouts for sections or elevations or something like that. And I can organize content, only the sections and so on, and keep them in kind of one book. One layout book and as separate pages. If I would like to create a new book, I can still click on prepare plot layout, but in this case this should not be the active book, because in that case I'm opening a new page in this book. I just click anywhere else and then I go and say, okay, prepare a plot layout. The function is the same. I just hit OK, and then now I have a new book, a layout 2, with new pages, and I can add more and more and more pages. So the point here is that this is how you can control how you organize the content on the documentation part. The other way you can organize your content, and now I will prepare content on this layout, is that you can actually create a drawing, create multiple drawings, organize their content into layers, and create, for example, here I have a 2D layout, I mean a 2D drawing, a floor plan containing, I don't know, furniture, dimensions, terrain, stairs, and switches and lamps and furniture. So a whole bunch of things I already have inside this project. But sometimes I just don't want to see the whole project. Perhaps I only want to see the walls and the sockets. And then I would like to see the same drawing setting up the walls and the furniture. Now, this can be easily maintained by, clicking here and, for example, using the layer walk and, just simply organizing the content, saying that, okay, I'm about to see and work with the walls and then with the electric symbols and lighting, and this is one sort of layout. But if I'm doing this is the drawing and this is not the layout.
I see, so there's a separate switch for that on the layout.
So let's just take this whole thing back to how it was, and let's just try to prepare 2 copies of the same drawing here. So what I'm doing now, I'm on a layout, and I just open up the project navigator. By the way, if it's not visible, it's usually just hidden down on the right hand side, and you can just click on it, and this way you can pin it to the right hand side. So let's say I have a floor plan. This is the floor plan with the ground floor. This is just click and drag. I think this should be okay with 1 to 200 now. Let's just organize it here and place it here. Now, the way I'm looking at this drawing now is exactly how it was at the moment I placed it here.
No change there.
No change. But I can make a difference. I can tell that, okay, this actually should not contain anything or everything other than if I click on the layer setting, and it's, let me just resize that, it's just too large now, and it's here. So I can see the same layer list. I do want to see the wall. Let me just select everything here and disable all the content. I can click here and see now they are not visible, and enable the electric symbols and the lighting, for example. And I say, okay, this is how I would like to represent it. I can even change the drawing scale. I can even switch floors if I want, and I say, okay, now I have this representation. This is the same drawing, just via a different filter.
So if I set up the layers here, does that modify the original filter settings?
No, this is where I work. This is where I can see everything, and the way I'm controlling this is, see, let me just show you that. If I'm going here and I just set up a totally different view, I don't know, only electric symbols and lighting and raster images, room and stair, and I don't know, just something else. This won't affect this here.
I see. So
even if I right click here and I say just refresh this, nothing will happen, because this is having a different filter looking at this same content. See, it did not change. And that's the whole point, because I have the world where I'm working in. Let me just enable everything. And I can decide what to work with, and then I can be sure that whatever I do on this content, it won't change the way I look at that content here.
So you don't lose any data.
So I can easily prepare 2 or 3 or 4 different versions of the same drawing if I already organize them well using the layers. So to prepare the same drawing, for example, with the furniture only and a few dimensions and things like that, I only need to click and drag again the ground floor, and okay, let's just set up the same view and go to the details layer and say, I would like to, again, disable everything except the walls, of course. Let's just keep the electric symbols now. I don't mind that. But for example, the objects, that will make a difference, and for example, lines, because there are a lot of terrain lines around, and I just would like to make a huge difference between the two versions. So let's say okay, and now I have, this is the same content. So what happens if something is changing here in the original drawing, which should affect both? I mean, let's say I have, for example, any of these
modify one of the walls, maybe
doors or something like that. For example, from this point on, this is an opening, not a door. So I just go here and I change this, I tell the software, okay, from this point on, we agreed with the owner that this should be. Let me just go here and properties. So this should be an opening instead of a door. Let's say okay. So this is changed here, but it's not automatically updated here. This is transactional, just as any other things in ARCHLine. You can decide when you have the time to wait for updating the content. And then now I'm just saying, okay, let's just update this or everything on this layout. Yeah, okay, let's just go with that.
So now both would be updated.
And see, the way I'm looking at this part is not changing, only the content is updated.
I see.
I can still see the same version here and the same version here, just with the updated visible parts. So that's a very good point. You don't have to save your project in a new file just because you would like to represent it in another way. You only need to prepare the layers well, and then you can organize them. And there is one another thing that I'm about to show you, is that there is a difference between going here and going to the settings and opening up the layer manager, which has a very limited option here, only the visibility you can change. And between this and if you click here, clicking on the layer manager, this is a totally different thing. I can still do the same thing. Let me just open the layer walk instead. See, now if I click on wall, it affects both of the content on this layout. So this is why you should not handle the layers via these settings. You should handle them copy by copy, and that way you can easily prepare this whole thing. It's just generic thing for all of the drawings, but when you are about to prepare something on a plot layout, you should go to the details of each and every drawing and tell what you would like to see on that specific content.
Perfect.
Okay, so that's how you can assemble something like that.
What other tricks you have regarding documentation?
Well, about documentation, I think there is another important part, which is the dimension. And let me just turn everything on. And about dimensions, well, there are several things that we could talk about when we talk about dimensions. And you watching this video are from many different countries, with many different settings and standards and things like that. The thing that I'm about to show you now is that you can actually change the settings and you can store them in a style. For example, here locally we use this sort of dimension type,
which might not be useful,
which is maybe not for everyone. So I can go here and I can say that, okay, well, I just want to change that. I don't use this standard, but instead of that, I, for example, use the DIN standard. And the way I'm about to measure the content that I have designed, because don't forget, this is not really the documentation. This is the building itself that you recreate virtually, and then you measure it. And then you can decide whether that specific thing, which is having a specific size, is measured in meters, in millimeters, in inches, in feet, and so you can make changes here. So, for example, I'm working with a carpenter, and my carpenter needs sizes in centimeters. So I just click here and say, okay, this is DIN in centimeters. I don't want to have 2 digits. That's just too accurate. I need only 1 or even 0. And I say, okay, and this is how it will look like. And then
for
if I like
this measurement, for only this dimension.
Now in this case, for only this, because I didn't save it. But if I like this, I can go there and, I don't know, even change the type and everything. And I changed everything that I wanted, and I click here, the no style, and I just save it in a new style, and I just save it as, and let's just keep it simple, webinar dimension. Like that, yeah, and I don't create subfolders and things like that because I only have 3, so it's not making any sense. I just hit OK. Now I have a style that I can use in this project. And when you create a style, let's say OK, then you can use that style easily. You can just click on dimension. This is a length dimension, aligned, and now I can select the webinar dimension and measure everything in centimeters. Wherever I click and whatever I measure now, it will be always represented in centimeters. And I can prepare another style using millimeters, inches, or something like that, and just simply switch between those styles. Now,
makes it much more convenient.
Yeah. Now I will talk about how you can save styles for future projects and how you can share that with others. But before I do, I just would like to show you 2 other things talking about the dimensions. Now, one thing is that dimension. A dimension is always kind of an associative dimension. That means whenever you measure something, see, if I hover my mouse over this dimension, I can see this info bar appearing, which tells me this is a length dimension, which floor, and so on and so on. And there's the last row is about, is it associative? Yes. And
what does that mean?
What is it associative with? It's associative with element 569 and element the other number. So if I would like to know which elements I or someone else measured, and when I change that element, the dimension itself can automatically update itself, then I can use that ID. It's what was that, 569. So I can click here, and click on by properties ID. And what is element 569? It's actually that's a line. It's it's perhaps a just a drafting line or something like that. So you can keep track of that. If you would like to break this connection because for
whatever reason,
you don't want this dimension followed any sort of change anymore, then you can click here and say, okay, edit and change dimensions to non-associative. You can click here and you can break this connection and see now it's not associative.
What does that mean?
That means whatever I do with the original item which was measured, this item, this dimension won't reflect those changes. It will always keep being the same with the same number 110 now on the top. So in that case, it will literally behave as a just a line drawing, not reacting to any sort of changes. Because normally a dimension actually reacts to changes. If I move this around and say this distance should be something different, then see they automatically updates themselves. Which is cool. I like that. But if for any reason I don't want to have that, then you can just break that connection. So to do this, and there is one another thing. You might not see this info bar appearing by default. I do see that because I clicked here and I just enable this tooltip. It's by default not enabled because sometimes these tooltips are very large. So this is the default setting. It's not turned on. And
but sometimes it gives you useful information, such as if a measurement or dimension is connected to something else.
You can actually turn this feature on and off. So this is how you can manage this. And going back to where I started first, if you created a style and you would like to use it in a new project, by default this style is not visible in any other projects. It's just visible here because I'm not necessarily wanting to see it in other projects. So to be able to save it into another project, what I do have to do is to start the tool, for example, the length dimension, and right click on the style that I'm about to save for future and say, okay, move to package of styles, which is called my.
Because whatever you create right now is going to be only in this project, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to get it to your toolbox, so to say, then you have to save it to the package style.
So the idea behind that there is a package of styles shipped with the software. That's the factory package of styles, and there is the package of styles contained in your project, and there is this world in between, which is the my package of styles, which is a container where you can just drop things, and with this tool you can save the same way you can save line styles, wall styles, slabs, and things like that. Whatever you can save it in a style, you can just store it here. And then there is another thing here. You can actually export this into an individual file, which is a very good solution when we are working on two different computers. You use your ARCHLine license, I'm using mine. And I just would like to share one specific style with you because we would like to create some sort of standard environment. Yes. In that case, I just save it, and then you just open your project, whichever you would like to, and you just import it, browse for that file and import it, and it will appear with the same settings, same material, same everything that I have done. The same way, you can actually export and share objects as well. Now, this happens in the object library. You go to the objects and say, okay, there is a warehouse library and I already collected many different things and I like this and this and this, and I would like to share that with you. Now, if I right click here, I can just simply rename, erase, or sort in categories. If I left click on it, I can find options for only this specific one single item. But if I would like to export more, then I need to click on, hold down the Control key, click on one item and the other one, and browse for the other ones. So anything I pick now, I have selected 3 items, and then I can go to the cogwheel icon and I can say export all of these, all 3. If I would like to export the total category here, this other category, I can right-click here and just fully export everything. And then the same way I did with the styles, just in this case in the design center, I can click here and say import and browse for that file. Now I actually do have something like that. It's in the can you help me? It's
the webinar folder.
The webinar folder. Okay,
that's the one.
And it's here and projects, and it's actually in my folder. And actually, I exported 3 different pillows, and this is the file for that. It's not that large. It's only 1.2 megabytes, and I open it, and then the software will tell you what sort of items were in that project, whether the import was successful or not. And if I say, okay, yeah, I would like to import it, it will appear in the 3D warehouse/pillows library. And let's just remember this name, it was glitter black. So, okay, let's say, okay, yes, and let's find it. For example, I already forgot where it was. I don't know whether it's here. So I just go here and I just say glitter. See, there was, that's the item I just imported. And if you click here, and click on the jump to category, it automatically jumps to the category where it was imported. So this is the other way around to find where it was imported if you only remember the name.
So that's the efficient way of getting setting styles or objects from one license to the other.
Yeah, and I think if you already talked about how you can export and import particles of your project, styles, objects, the same way or a very similar way you can export actually materials, then I think we should talk about how you can import larger things, like for example a complete drawing into a project, because a project is a complex kind of container. It contains multiple drawings, so you cannot import a full project into an existing project. It would be just too complex and too difficult to maintain. But you can pick one single drawing and import that because, for example, that contains your drawing that you just created, and I would like to take parts and use those parts in my project.
How do you do that? I mean, would you just use a DWG file to transport, or? I could
even use IFC if I would like to have more. The DWG file is not bad, but it's not the best because it contains only 2D. It literally contains lines, and sometimes it contains 3D objects, but it's not as complex as a beam object. It's not having a, it's not a wall. It's not a roof. It's just an object or a 2D drawing. So for that, I could use an IFC, which is we always suggest users to use IFC if you would like to communicate. If you do have the luck to communicate with other users using other BIM software, this is the most effective way. If you don't want to talk in documentation way. But in case of ARCHLine, it's absolutely unnecessary because you already have the full rich information in that specific project file. Why to convert it into another format where you 100% lose some of the data? You don't have to. What you do is you for example sent me that file, and then I have it on my computer now, and I go to File, Open Project, and this was your folder, and I think you have a project here. That was the solar shade.
Yes.
And if I would like to open one drawing from your project, I need to look into that project using this preview, and I can see 2 different content. One is the view, and one is the document itself, and I could have more here. But now, the most important thing here is that there is a sense in opening the 2D, but it makes no sense to import the 3D
because it's just going to be an image.
It's just a camera.
I see.
So I don't want to do that. I just open your 2D drawing from which I can generate 3D at any time. And I just click here, and this is the point here. I do not want to open the whole project. I just want to import this file, which I have selected here. This one single drawing. I import it, open, and it automatically appears in a new drawing.
I see. Can I generate a 3D from this?
Yes. Whenever you are in a 2D content which contains building parts and you hit 3D, it will always generate that specific content. So if I'm see, now it's generating the floor plan.
Okay, so this is not just a line drawing.
No.
This is the actual 2D representation of architectural objects.
It's a rich part of an existing ARCHLine project, and you can, just handle that content. Let me just go to experiment review so we can easily find it. It's your project. It's the same content with the same materials.
Same thing.
So now, actually, from this point on, it's important to talk about how the software generates the 3D, because now I actually have two different projects. Two different drawings in one single project. So this is how you can control that. If you click on the other drawing and hit the 3D hammer, you will build up this part of your project and not the other one. The other one will be, thrown away until
but you can regenerate it anytime you want.
So at any time you can just switch between the two. If you work on this specific content, if you say, okay, let's just edit it and do anything what I want and click OK, sometimes these things just merge together because you actually work continuously on two different things, and the software have to keep up updated these two things. But to keep it clear, you just click on the drawing. Do not select anything, because in that case the software will only generate the selected thing. So I'm not selecting anything. I just click on 3D and it's generating the 3D of this. Or if I click in the other one and I click on 3D, it will generate the 3D of that project.
And you can see the project navigator that this document.
It's actually I have a floor plan with the building, and there's a document with the other part. Yeah. Well, actually, at the end, if I just already used anything that I needed, I can just close it and say, okay, just close it, and I don't need it anymore. It will go to the hidden view, so it's still part of your project. It's just not visible. So if you would like to completely get rid of it, you just right-click here and say, okay, delete it. And the next time you save the project, it won't save with the project.
Perfect. So that's actually what we wanted to discuss during this webinar. And when we were researching the topics to talk about, we realized that two-dimensional modeling and documentation is a huge topic. So we are going to devote another session, which will be entirely about how to redraw images and how to use tools such as line, polyline, offsets, rounding of intersections, edges. So if you're looking for something which is targeted for two-dimensional CAD drawing and some tips and tricks how to do that in ARCHLine, we are going to have another show dedicated to that. Until then, we will see you next week, where we are going to have another show, and hope to see you there during the same time frame as we always do. Thank you very much for joining in. If you have any feedback or any remarks, keep them coming, as you always do. And if you like this show, then like this video and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.
Goodbye.